When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Schinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we review stuff that got delayed or didn't come out in that other universe, but came out in our universe, either on time or, in this case, at all. I'm your host, as always, Steven Schinder, and this time I'm joined by a friend to talk about Star Wars Holiday Special 2. Which dropped on Disney Plus in our universe recently. Yeah, they made a sequel to the thing in a way. So introductions are in order. You may have heard him on the podcast Question, Possible Answer. It is Jesse Bennett. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me aboard for this episode, Steven.
Yeah, like Star Wars is pretty much what brought us together in like the online fan community, like made us aware of each other, and so it was only natural that I get someone within that community on this episode, and yeah, like this just felt like a good fit to finally bring you on. For those who don't know, I was also on the Goonies episode of Question Possible Answer, and it was like a really fun 2-hour discussion on like what if they did this or that type of stuff. Is really fun.
Yeah, that one was pretty fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is a bit of an odd special, but first, I kind of want to ask, so I don't know if you watched the entire original holiday special, but from what you've seen of it, like what were your impressions?
As is the course of public, I guess, review of the holiday special. I'm probably on board with most of those thoughts. Just it's definitely not the best holiday special that's out there for anything.
Yeah, it does get very cringe, right? And
Yeah.
this is something that I've said before, but like in my opinion, the holiday special is like the Super Bowl. The best parts are the commercials.
I've never thought about it that way, but yeah.
Like the toy commercials that are in the version that people see online, it's actually like pretty fun to see what it was like in that period when they were like advertising Star Wars toys. And of course, it has Chewbacca's family and the introduction of Boba Fett in an animated segment, which is pretty cool, but also kind of weird the way it ends. Did you have a chance to see the animated segment of it?
Yeah, I did, yes. I pretty much watched up until the end of the animated segment, and then I just had other things I had to do, and I didn't get back to finishing the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen the original special, like, I want to say 2.5 times. Like, I remember watching it back in maybe 2006 or 2007. I was probably like 11 or 12 or something, and like at the time I was like, oh, this is okay, and like it, like the flaws of it didn't stick out to me as much, but then when I rewatched it 3 years ago on its 40th anniversary, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty bad. Why am I doing this to myself? And then last year, Joey Mays, a friend of the show who's on the Ghostbusters Afterlife episode, his podcast Tangents with Friends did like a watch along watching the holiday special, and it was split in halves. I think I saw one of the halves. I can't remember if I like watched the whole thing, but that's why I say like 2.5. So yeah, it's kind of this taboo thing in Star Wars. It's like everyone kind of has to experience it as a rite of passage. But Jon Favreau has said in the past that he wants to make a new holiday special, and last year we got a Lego Star Wars holiday special, but this year, we, at least in our universe, we finally got a proper second live action Star Wars holiday special. Well, I guess we can just get into it. So it begins with like this opening sketch where like Jon Favreau is talking to George Lucas, right? And he's like, hey, is it okay if we do a second holiday special? Like, we'd like to have you on it. And George just like is really resistant to be part of like another one. Like, what'd you think of that opening segment?
I really love George's response. He's pretty much saying, "Are you out of your mind? Why would you want to make another one of these?"
Yeah.
And he's like completely against it. And then we don't get to see the whole conversation, but John's basically, well, here's some of my ideas for it. And by the end of it, George is like, you know what? Sure, let's do it.
Yeah, and then once John leaves the room, George, like, he gets a box from like under his desk, and it's a bunch of tapes that are labeled the original Star Wars holiday special, and he takes out a hammer and like smashes them. So like it's a little reference to that thing. He like basically his disdain toward the original, which I thought was funny that they included in this. Yeah, then we get like an opening crawl of sorts. This was kind of a different way of doing the crawl, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not sure how I felt about it, but it makes sense because it's not a proper Star Wars movie, so they want to have their normal style of crawl.
Right. Because instead of, in space, it's like the letters are written out in alphabet soup that's like going up against the screen. And it's like, whoa, what the heck is this?
Right, which I do like that because it's just basically their way of saying right out front, we're not going to take this completely serious. It's a holiday special. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah, and then there's like a little reference to Alphabet Squadron. Like it kind of crossfades, and you see like some of those starships are part of Alphabet Squadron, like flying around, and that it just keeps like crossfading between that and Alphabet Soup. And it was like a really odd choice, but it really primed us to see like how ridiculous this can get. But like at this point, I wasn't sure like how good is this going to be, but at the same time, I feel like the bar was so low for the original holiday special that I was kind of optimistic in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the bar was almost non-existent, so it was, going into it, I was like, well, there's no way it could be worse than the first one.
Yeah. And then we see like Jon Favreau on a set, like trying to get all the actors ready. And then Harrison Ford comes on he's like dressed as Indiana Jones, and he's like, what the hell? You told me this is going to be an Indiana Jones holiday special. And then Alden Ehrenreich comes on, and he's like, you told me this is going to be Solo too.
Right, and it's like, well, if we would have told you what it was, would you have done it?
Yeah, and they're like, probably not. But what'd you think of how Harrison and Alden interacted in this moment? Because we haven't really seen them talk to each other really on screen, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, I don't recall ever seeing them together, at least like not on camera or anything before this. And at first, it looked like Harrison might have been giving him like a side eye or something, like, you took my role from me. But then we kind of find out, no, he was just testing him to see how he would respond to his look. And it was like, oh, they actually have a sort of brotherly love type thing. And then they both do the pose of Han together towards the camera. I was like, yes, the moment I didn't know I wanted until they did it.
And then someone dressed as Greedo walks behind them and says, McClunky. So the special shifts between like out of universe stuff and in universe stuff. Like some of the in universe stuff gets kind of wild. So it's like, I don't know whether or not to take it seriously, but it's just like, this is a holiday special. I'm along for the ride type of thing. So, like, what'd you think of how they handled sort of post T-Rose Rise of Skywalker content in the bits of this?
It definitely felt and looks like they were trying to pull some of the Lego special into live action, but at the same time, they didn't want to just rehash an old story. And so at first, I was kind of, oh, I don't know, because it seemed like it started off very similar as last year's Lego special. And then very quickly, it's like, okay, we're going to change it up now. And I thought it was great how they were like, haha, we're doing the same thing. Not really.
Yeah, like we got Rey training Finn to be a Jedi. And so you got like those parallels there. But there's also like some different stuff because they go on this mission to Felucia. And you know, this is a pretty good choice for a Star Wars planet. Like anytime it pops up, like whether it be in a book, like we talked about recently on the Mandalorian an original novel episode, or in a video game or something, like I love seeing this planet with like all its flora and whatnot. Something that really stuck out to me is that the creatures, like the Acklays and whatnot, they looked very low budget. Like they're not like they're practical puppet looking things, but it's very obvious that they look fake here, right?
Yes, I wasn't expecting full funding like you would see on The Mandalorian or the sequel trilogy or anything like that. But I was kind of expecting a little bit of a higher budget, but I can see maybe they had a higher budget and they just used it elsewhere because I mean they had so many people involved with this one that you can see that okay, a lot of their budget probably went to securing some of these people.
Yeah, and it kind of pans offset to show George and John because George asks John like, "Why didn't you just use CGI?" And John's like, "Trust me, the people will love this." So like it gets like very meta, which gets fun like in moments.
Right, yeah, like you're not expecting to see the behind the scenes conversations happening during the special, but the cameraman, I don't know if it was a part of the script or if he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna pan 90 degrees real quick and zoom in on this conversation over here.
Yeah, well, like it definitely adds another layer to the hilarity. Oh, hilarity. I guess that's a pun. But yeah, so it comes back to Felucia, and like, what'd you think of their reason for being here?
I mean, at first I saw Felucia and I was like, oh, yeah, of course, they're gonna go to this beautiful uh fauna-filled planet, the lighting of just the whole area is like, oh yeah, it makes sense because it is, like you mentioned earlier, it is a beautiful planet. And then out of nowhere, they're like, hey, last time it was Chewie's family was the topic of the special, and this time it was the Porg, and for whatever reason, his family was on Felucia, even though he's found on Octo. Sorry, pronunciation check. But it was interesting. It definitely was very callbacky to the original special without being, I guess, as I don't even know the right way to say it, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole plot behind that.
Yeah, because the way they found out about this was that Finn had a vision that this Porg's family was like basically kidnapped by some pirates who then went to Felucia, and they are like searching and they come across none other than Hondo Onaka, who like has to try convince them like, whoa, I'm not the one who stole the porgs. And it's like it's the animatronic that they use at Disneyland, but they got like the voice actor Jim Cummings to do it, and he sounds very authentic as Hondo Onaka, even if it's like so clearly an animatronic.
Yeah, to hear Jim Cummings' voice again, I mean, and I thought that was just a great little treat.
Yeah, and there's a moment where the animatronic is kind of malfunctioning, so it pans to John, who's like, "Someone go fix it," and like one of the people working on this like runs over, hits it with a wrench, and then it starts working again.
Right, and then I believe it was like shortly after that, you just have another moment where it starts to malfunction again, and George is just like, "Go to a different segment. Let's just do something else real quick." And it's like, wow, they're not editing this down at all, but okay.
Yeah, and that's when we cut to a musical performance by AJR. Now, I'm not super familiar with AJR, but you know like a thing or two about them, right?
Yeah, I've got most of their albums, I think. I know, like, in my neck of the woods where I live, I'm not going to say they're a big deal, but we tend to get, I guess we could say, like, the unpopular stuff is more popular here. It's kind of weird. So, yeah, I listen to them quite a bit. And so, at least for me, I wasn't expecting it at all. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I can't believe that, they got AJR to be a part of this special.
Yeah, like what was the name of this song that they were playing here?
I mean, it seemed like it was something that like they were kind of doing a parody of one of their own songs, and they threw like a Star Warsy twist to it. And I want to say they were doing like a parody of "Burn the House Down." I believe that's the name of the song. But instead of like "Burn the House Down," they were talking about like "Pass the Blue Milk." It was kind of weird, but fun at the same time.
When it comes to Star Wars references, I feel like it tends to come back to the blue milk every now and then, one way or another.
I saw like they had bottles of blue milk on the wall at one point, and like it seemed like they're like blue milk was just everywhere this time around.
Yeah, and you even see like the people working behind the camera drinking some blue milk from like their glasses and mugs and stuff. It's really weird.
Right. It just made me wonder. It's like, so, I mean, I still don't know how to make blue milk. I want to say there's a recipe out there somewhere. So it's like, did they follow a recipe or did they come up with their own thing? It was just like one of my random thoughts whenever I was like, they're all drinking it. I didn't know this was, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah, because a friend of mine has the Galaxy's Edge recipe book. I don't remember if it has the blue milk recipe, but I remember when I visited him, well, this would have been like almost 2 years ago now, I guess. Like he basically what he did was he used like blue milk dye, but the blue milk that's at Galaxy's Edge is kind of, from what I remember, was kind of like frosty in texture, and it tasted like berries, kind of a fruity drink in terms of the taste. So maybe there are like berries or something in it, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's just, I'm gonna have to look into that now, and because now I really want some blue milk.
Yeah. And then after this song parody segment, we see Weird Al come aboard, and he's like, "Hey, why didn't you guys invite me to this thing?" And then George is like, "Security," and then you see like some people dressed as those security droids like K2SO like run at him, and we get to see like Weird Al like try to fight against them. Like, what'd you think of that little bit?
That little moment was just awesome, especially because you get to hear one of the droids like yelling at him to stop, and if you listen closely, it's voiced by none other than Keanu Reeves as our main security droid. And I thought it was just great because you kind of see some John Wick movement in there because, I mean, he's a security droid. So, he's trying to be like, get back here and doing all these crazy maneuvers, I guess you could say, with his blaster and all this. And somehow Weird Al is just dodging all of it.
Yeah, like I didn't notice it was Keanu Reeves until I looked at the credits. I don't know if his voice is as recognizable as other voices to other people, but it was definitely something that slipped past me until like we eventually got to the credits. And to get him in this is like, I mean, he's like pretty, like everyone basically loves him because of John Wick and everything, and that whole thing of how nice he is in person, apparently. One of the other security droids is actually voiced by Brendan Fraser, which I thought was funny because how he plays Robot Man in Doom Patrol. I actually recently saw this meme where it was like Keanu Reeves and Brendan Fraser could star in a movie simply titled Movie, and we would all go watch it even if we didn't know what it was about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it was just like a nice wholesome meme, I guess. But yeah, Weird Al is pretty, like he seems pretty OP in this. And there's a moment where he like reaches out, he's like doing all these flips and stuff, and it's like, whoa, like this is pretty insane. But there are like some shots where it's very obviously a stunt double wearing a Weird Al wig and the type of shirt that he would normally wear and whatnot. But there's like a moment where he like reaches out his arm and tries to use the force, and then one of the robots is like, stop that, and like slaps his arm, and he's like, ow, that hurts.
Right. And it's like there was definitely one moment during that with all the flips and everything. I was like, okay, is this completely unscripted? But then you can see the wire harness that Weird Al is wearing to help him do all these flips. And it's like, oh, so it is all scripted. Weird Al didn't just bust in the door to be like, how come I didn't get an invite? And it was a very weird way, as is most. I say most holiday specials. We've only got 2 now that are live action, but it was definitely very holiday specially of them to do it that way.
A lot of it is scripted, but I've heard like, they've talked about how there are some moments that are improvised. What's funny is one of the things that was improvised was the sketch where the original directors of Solo, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, showed up, and they just had some Legos with them, and they basically just told them to like do whatever. Like they didn't give them a script, so I guess in this instance they were fine with them improvising. What'd you think of what those two did in this Lego scene?
It was funny, and it also seemed very callbacky again to the Lego holiday special, because they start setting up all these figurines, and they have like a Palpatine figure and a Rey figure, just like they just start meshing everything together, and then out of nowhere it seemed like one of them just got mad and like flicked one of the Legos, and he flies across the room, and it seemed like they spent a good 5 minutes just like looking for it.
Yeah. There's also a moment where one of them steps on a Lego by accident, and like that definitely was not scripted. Like the pain and the yell was real, and they just kept it in.
Yeah, it was like, you're not gonna edit that part out at least. All they do is add a bleep over for for a special word that he chooses to use.
Yeah, because they got to keep this family friendly because it's Star Wars. And they also like reenact a scene from Solo where it's basically like Han and Kira escaping Corellia at the beginning, and so it's like this stop motion Lego version of that scene, which I thought looked really well made. Like it looked very crisp and like just well done. Like it makes me want a Lego Star Wars movie directed by these guys.
Right, but keep it stop motion. Don't have it be animated Lego. Just like let them do a stop motion Lego movie and see how well it turns out. Because if they can do this short little 15-minute clip and make it look beautiful, I'm sure they could do wonders on like a big screen stop motion Lego.
Yeah, well, like it's been a while since I've seen the Lego Movie 1 and 2 and Lego Batman.
But those two look stop motion to me. I don't know if they actually are, but they definitely look more like that than, say, these 3D animated Lego specials that you see on Disney Plus or on HBO Max. And they still end up being funny, but I definitely prefer the visual aesthetic of the stop motion looking stuff.
Yeah, it's to me, it's just more. Even though it's not real, the stop motion to me makes it more real, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's like you're looking at an actual object in real life, I guess. They finally cut back to Fallujah and their mission to find the Porg's family. And Rose is able to she's leading the way because she's noticing all these clues of where the pirates are, all these she's basically kind of like Aragorn in this scene, noticing all these different footprints and stuff. And when they get to these pirates, what'd you think of the choice of species that they chose for these pirates?
I thought it was pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting to see Ardenians in the pirate role. It makes sense, because the multiple arms and all that, but it was still surprising because I feel like most of the pirates that we've seen in universe have been more humanoid than not.
Yeah, and we haven't seen a whole lot of these. So obviously there's Jon Favreau's character in Solo, but it's wow, they're finally taking more advantage of this. So I think there was maybe one at least in the Mandalorian, but to see more of them here is just okay, nice. They're taking full advantage of some of the more recent aliens that they've introduced in the lore.
Right, I think the last Ardenian I remember seeing was Rio in Solo.
Yeah, that was his name.
And it was just I've wanted more Ardenians in Star Wars since Solo, and then playing, and so just seeing this species getting the recognition it deserves, even if it is in the form of a holiday special, was just amazing.
There were some recognizable voices for these Ardenians. Once one of them started speaking, I was like, wait a minute, is that Paul Rudd? And lo and behold, it is Paul Rudd.
Right, and Paul Rudd fashion, I believe whenever we first actually see them, the one that he voices is just off in a corner, and it's what are you doing? And he's oh, I got introduced to this amazing dish, and we don't ever really get to see a name for it, but it just looked like mac and cheese. But it was in typical Paul Rudd fashion, his character is just off to the side for a minute and just oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. You all do your thing, talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna eat this beautiful delicacy.
Yeah, and what's funny about this is, he's eating mac and cheese, but he also he kind of breaks the fourth wall a bit here when he's I don't just like mac and cheese, I also like Mac and me. And then he gets out a remote, turns on a TV, and plays the scene from that E.T. ripoff Mac and Me that he likes playing whenever he's interviewed by Conan O'Brien.
Right, the notorious scene. And it was I was not expecting that at all. I saw the mac and cheese and I was haha, little side reference. And then out of nowhere it just cuts to it. And I was really?
Yeah, they probably had to license out that scene for this. Have you ever seen the full movie of that, or is it just the clip?
I've only ever seen the clip. I've wanted to see the movie itself, but it's hard to find the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what it sounds like. It is definitely a ripoff of E.T., but it also has some heavy McDonald's advertising for some reason. It's really weird.
I mean, I can see that because Mac and Me, McDonald's, I guess.
Yeah.
that was probably their big thing. Anything with Mac, we got to try and do this.
Yeah, for sure. And so they kind of cut back to like the in-universe stuff, and the pirates are basically like, we intend to open up a pork restaurant, and then Chewbacca, like he's basically like fighting them, and it's like really heartwarming seeing how like Chewbacca would basically like fight for these porgs, I guess.
Right,
It- it-
especially because it seemed like in Last Jedi, I believe it was, whenever we
Yeah.
actually got, there's the scene with Chewbacca like eating what I believe is a porg, or going to eat a porg, and
like he cooked it and was about to eat it, but
yeah, and then the other porgs like give him the puppy dog eyes, or I guess the poor guys, and it's like from that moment on, he's like, okay, fine, I will fight for your cause, and then we finally see him fighting for their cause in the holiday special.
it's like a complete 180, and like I guess you could consider this character development. And I think there was even like a storybook a few years ago called Chewie and the Porgs that took place during Last Jedi. So I guess there is like a bit of continuity with this, like him helping out these Porgs, which is nice. And once again, Eunice Slotamo, he does such a great job with the movements of Chewie, like making him feel like the same iconic character we've seen all these years.
Right. And then it was also kind of fun because we get a few characters trying to talk to Chewie, not realizing that he can understand English. And so they're like trying to talk Wookiee to him, but they don't speak Wookiee. And I'm pretty sure at one point one of them says something very offensive.
Yeah. And they make it funny by like bleeping it as if it's like, well, because like it's in Shriwook, the Wookiee language, but they bleeped it for comedic effect.
Right, I guess just to let the audience know, hey, he said a bad word and Shriwook.
They stop fighting for a bit, and there's like no talking, but then there's like a lot of bleeping, and they're like, where's that coming from? And they look at R2D2, and he's just like, bleeping all over the place.
Right, and it was kind of weird because I didn't notice it until R2 made his appearance, but they weren't just using the standard bleep to cut out words, they were using R2's bleeps, which I thought was a very creative choice.
C-3PO tries bending down to like cover BB-8 and Dio's ears, even though they don't really have ears.
Right, they're gonna hear it anyways. I guess if you would call it hearing. I mean, they're gonna receive the transmission, I guess.
Yeah, that's when R2 like sort of goes into action, and for many years it seems like he's been without the the rockets that are like on his legs or whatever in the prequel era, but I guess by this point he finally has them again, and he like flies into the pirates as a way of attacking them.
Yeah, and then he even like pulls up an old hologram. I didn't recognize the character, but I found it kind of convenient that he had this hologram to basically talk to the pirates for him. I mean, I don't remember exactly what the hologram said, but it was basically saying, where the porgs or something, like, you have my family or something like that. And it was like, okay, so I guess he does have a full memory bank and he hasn't been deleting anything. Why haven't you used holograms to talk in the past?
The hologram looked like some sort of droid he's met along the way. I guess he like asked it to like, he communicated with it, and like I don't know why they didn't use C-3PO for this, but it was like it looked like an IG assassin droid for some reason, and it's like they used that in the hologram to like do the speaking. Also, like when R2 was flying, they like did the thing where 3PO was like, he flies now, and then Finn's like, he flies now, and Poe's like, he flies now.
Right, there's like, yeah, okay.
So, like, this was like a really fun fight and interrogation scene. Interrogate the pirates, having their weapons ready. And then it goes into like a little break, like cutting to another like different segment. And that's when we see Josh Gad like run to the set. And I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where Josh Gad was trying to like interview Daisy Ridley to get her to spill secrets about the new Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
But like when he ran on the set, like John and George were like, "Oh no, keep him away," and he's like, "Oh no, I just want to play Olaf and do like a song," and he like puts on like a snowman costume. It's like super ridiculous.
Yeah, and he chooses to sing I believe it was the Puddle song from Frozen 2. And it's like, you're doing this for no reason. This doesn't match up, we're not on Hoth or anything. What are you doing here? And he's like, I'm singing, give me a minute.
Yeah, I actually still haven't seen Frozen 2. So when the song came on, I was like, okay, this is probably from one of the Frozen movies, but I cannot it doesn't sound that familiar to me. Like I couldn't place it, but yeah, I guess it makes sense that it would be from the more recent one.
Right. I was almost half expecting another like parody based song, but I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that, because I mean, sometimes we just want a musical number that's not referencing the universe that it's in.
Right. So instead, here we have a song from a different Disney universe, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm still not sure how I feel about all the musical numbers and everything, but it was nice. Just a quick little, like, everyone was like, keep him away, and then they're like, oh, he sings so beautifully, let's stop and listen.
Yeah, like they let him sing for the full duration of the song, surprisingly. And like it cuts to them and they have like tears in their eyes and they just applaud him. It's like so wholesome. It's ridiculous.
Right, and then at the end he just bows and says thank you and runs off, and it's like, where did he go? And they're like, I don't know, carry on.
Yeah. And so they cut back to Fallujah. Like they really keep it contained. Like much of it is like contained to this planet, I guess, because of the budget, which I mean, it makes sense to me because like the original holiday special was on Kashyyyk and there's not much else except for that one cantina on Tatooine, I guess. But yeah, like they interrogate the pirates and they say like where the Porg family is hidden and basically like give them like they fork over the map and they basically have to fly to the other side of the planet. And so, they hop on the Falcon, they fly to the other side of the planet. And when they get there, like it looks very much exactly the same as where they were before. And again, I think that's because of the budget, which I mean, I guess that was pretty funny. But what do you think?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to look exactly the same. Like the framing wasn't even shifted over 2 feet or anything. It was like almost literally the exact same set. They just took the like campfire that the pirates had and stuff in their tents, and they just like removed those and replaced it with the next group of people.
Yeah, it's kind of lazy, but because it's a holiday special, I'm more forgiving of it. And so they try like following the directions on the map and they end up at this giant flower looking thing, which like it has like this door on it, which apparently like Rey and Finn figure out that it can only be opened with the Force, and so they both try to reach out and close their eyes. And like what did you think of this moment here?
To me, it felt like a callback to, I mean, not even really a callback, but it just seemed very similar to Luke trying to teach Rey how to reach out with the Force. Because, I mean, Finn is still new to all of this. And so, like, Rey's doing this, but she has to keep looking over at him to make sure that he's doing okay. And it was just like, it was interesting because then like she picks up like a twig or branch or something and like hits his hand just like Luke hit hers, and it was like, no, 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 reach out from inside. And then he's like, oh, and then they go back to it, and then the door finally opens.
Yeah, and it really feels like the Mines of Moria moment in Fellowship of the Ring, right? When like the entrance like finally opens.
Right. The only thing, like, we didn't get any type of, hey, how do you say this in Wookiee? You know, like I almost expected something along those lines, and then Ray's just like, no, 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 it says use the Force. Not, it doesn't say something like speak friend and enter. All it says is use the Force.
Right. But what we do get that's kind of similar is instead of a tentacle monster, we get like this carnivorous plant that's like trying to like grab everyone with its tendrils to try to eat them.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that was almost seemed like a obviously a cheaper version, but it seemed like a shot for shot of them walking through, and then out of nowhere, what looks like this giant Venus flytrap or something, like reaches forward and grabs Finn's leg and starts to pull him back out, and is like, that is almost a shot for shot of Fellowship whenever they're trying to enter the mine.
Yeah, and come to think of it, I think this might have been from a Sarlacc, because I just remembered in the Force Unleashed video game on Fallujah, there's a Sarlacc pit. So maybe this was kind of a reference to that sort of thing.
I completely forgot that they had. Yeah, I could see that. It's like a plant mutation Sarlacc, like a weird version.
Yeah. And so they make it inside the entrance, are out of harm's way for the time being. What'd you think of how the inside of this place looked?
I thought it was kind of weird because, I mean, from the outside, it looks like this giant plant stalk with a door in it. And then they go inside, the door closes, and it's almost pitch black. And then they're like, oh no, we need light. And it takes them all a minute to realize what they're going to do. And then it's like, I mean, at this point, they've rescued Finn and they're all inside, obviously. But, and then it's all dark, and they're like, Finn's like, I can't see. And Ray finally is like, you have a lightsaber. You went and made a lightsaber. Come on, turn it on. And they turn it on, and their colors combined kind of illuminate the inside of this plant, where you can see like the veins of, I guess, like what would be, the veins of the plant. You can see in the walls with like, I guess it looks like the, just like electrons and everything that you would see of like if you were to look at like a brain or something. I'm thinking of like Iron Man 3 or something, when Gilly killed, I can't remember his name right now, but he puts that thing on his head. He's like, that's my brain. And yes, that scene with Pepper, and you can see like all the neurons firing and everything. It reminded me of that, because you just see basically the plant's neurons firing along the walls, but it's different colors, and it was very, I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, mainly because they were finally on a different set based on Felucia. So, I mean, but then they just beautifully artistically done.
Yeah, like they definitely made this look nicer than some of the other parts of the set. And the way that it's presented, I think part of it is probably the lighting. Like it felt very magical and otherworldly. It's always nice when Star Wars is able to capture that sort of vibe with these new locations that they explore. Like whenever I think of Fallujah, I think of, the terrain that we see in Revenge of the Sith and like Clone Wars, but this kind of adds another thing I can imagine when thinking about Fallujah, not just the same stuff.
Yeah, it was nice to finally see, because I don't personally recall ever seeing anything that was like an interior shot of Fallujah from Clone Wars or anything. It has been a while since I've watched it, so I might be wrong, but it was nice to see a live action interior shot of Fallujah.
So as they continue exploring within, we cut to another segment, and this time it's Anthony Daniels sort of walks over to John and George, and he's like, when do I get to sing my Christmas number? Because, I don't know if you know this, but back in 1980, there was this Christmas album called Christmas in the Stars, and included C-3PO and R2-D2 in it, and so you had like 3PO singing and R2 beeping and stuff.
I did not know about that one.
Yeah, it's pretty much become like a tradition within the last few years for me to listen to it around the holidays.
I think it just became a tradition for me as well.
Nice. Yeah, and so like they keep saying it'll be later or whatever, but Anthony Daniels is like begging to like do it now, and so they're like, okay, fine, go ahead and do it. And so he goes ahead and like sings the opening song. He's like, Christmas in the stars, Christmas in the stars. You know, that song. I'll link the song in the show notes because I can't remember all the words off the top of my head, but I thought it was like really cool for them to reference that album here.
Yeah, they definitely had a lot of callbacks that I wasn't expecting. Mainly just because with how the first holiday special went, I thought they were gonna have it be like a self-contained little story, and then the whole time they're like, no, we're just gonna, we're gonna reference this and this and this and just all these some not so great moments and other fantastic moments. And it's like, okay, so they're not just cherry picking the good moments, they're kind of, they're referencing a lot.
So when he finishes a song, they like applaud and whatnot, and then they cut back to the scene, and within this plant, like within this network that they're traveling through, they meet this character who looks like kind of a sentient plant in a way, like kind of humanoid but also plant-like. I'm not sure what species he is, but he's played by Will Ferrell, and it's like, oh wow, that makes so much sense because Jon Favreau directed Elf.
Right, and it's, hey, another Christmas thing or holiday thing, and so of course he's going to reach out to someone who has helped him with his success in the cinema world for holiday movies.
Yeah, this is kind of a side tangent, but do you have like any favorite holiday movies?
The Home Alone series has always been one of my go-tos, and then you mentioned Elf, that's another one of them.
Yeah, I actually watched the new Home Alone movie recently. My opinion is that the first two are the best ones, like for sure, and then 3, 4, and 5 feel like just comfort food TV movies. Like they're okay, but not that special, but they're still watchable. And then I thought that the new one, Home Sweet Home Alone, was surprisingly very entertaining, and I really liked how they reinvented the premise. So like after enjoying the new one, I was surprised to see how low the like Rotten Tomato and IMDb scores were, and I was like, what?
I still haven't seen the new one. I do plan on watching it soon, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's on Disney Plus, so it's very accessible.
Yeah, I saw it on there, and I was like, oh, it's out. Awesome. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm going to watch the holiday special instead.
Yeah. Will Ferrell's character, like, it feels like he has the same mannerisms as Buddy the Elf, the character he played in that movie. Yeah, like, what'd you think of his role here?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, obviously, like we mentioned, Jon Favreau is going to pick him for a holiday role, but it still kind of caught me off guard to see Will Ferrell involved in a Star Wars project. That was just one of the people I'd never expected to see make the transition for some reason. So it kind of took me out of it for a minute, but then I just kind of, I accepted it and moved on with it and began to enjoy the character.
Yeah, because he actually says some really profound stuff, and he's like, the Force is around us, and it also goes by another name. Like, some people view it as the holidays, and the thing about a holiday is that it is special to us. And it's like, oh, okay, he's just trying to shoehorn the title in there somehow, I guess.
Right. And then, he was also speaking very slow, and he makes direct eye contact with the camera while he says that part. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, this is what they're doing. You said it moment.
Yeah, it just cuts to George and John, and they're just like face palming and shaking their heads about his delivery.
And then you even get, George looking over at John and saying, "Hey, do we have enough film to reshoot this part?" And John's like, "No, we don't. Sorry, we're gonna have to keep this in. Keep going."
Yeah, they're like shooting all of this on film, like not even digitally or whatever. Like they're just doing this the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, like I was surprised that they didn't use, and that they weren't using. I just lost the name of it. The set that they used for Mandalorian and all that. The giant.
The volume.
Yes, the volume. I was really surprised that they didn't make use of that more. I'm guessing probably because they're in the process right now of, doing Mando and all these other shows that have priority to access to the volume. But I was surprised that we, at least from what I could tell, there weren't really any shots using it.
It's kind of weird because even though the volume, whenever I watched The Mandalorian, I never thought, oh, this is on a set with a wall with digital stuff on it. Like, that never like really came to, like, it never felt obvious to me. Like it always felt to me like, okay, they're at an outdoor location. This is what the environment, like the sky and everything looks like. And it's like, okay. And yet somehow its absence from the special was noticeable.
And I don't know if that was because they were just shooting it on film, since you have the lower quality of the filming device, if it just made it stand out that much more that they weren't using it, or if they had shot it digitally, would we still have noticed that the volume wasn't being used?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. They ask Will Ferrell's character, he never like says his name, like, so they just nickname him the Plant. I mean, sure, like it kind of lacks creativity, but they just go along with it. And they ask him like where the porgs are, and he like shows them a few different like passageways, and he's like, if you feel the holiday spirit, you'll know the way. The characters like are looking, like trying to decide, and then all of a sudden, like in unison, they all point at one of the passageways and are like, "This is the way." And it's like, oh, they said the thing.
Right. And they're like, are we sure this is the way? And then Poe says, "We have spoken. We're going this way."
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, like I accept that one. Like it worked. That one actually worked out pretty well.
It takes them a while to like go through. Apparently, like, they do like crossfade to signify the passage of time. And they get to this place that's like an island with water around it, but it's underground. And that's where they find the Porg's family. And it's like, seeing them like get reunited, it's kind of a heartwarming moment with some nice music added to it.
It was a very heartfelt moment, and I for whatever reason, I was expecting another witty comment or something, but we really didn't get one at first. They had the Porgs meet, reunite, and then we finally get it whenever Poe leans over. He's like, "Hey, what are they saying? Like, I don't speak Porg."
Yeah, and then C-3PO translates for them, and it basically reveals that they're saying, "Now that we are together, we are all home." And, it just ties into that theme that home isn't just a place, it's like a feeling and the people around you. And, they bring up that thing about a feeling again, just tying into some of the universal themes in Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah, I really didn't even catch that the first time. It was just like, oh yeah, home, it's where the heart is, or family, however you want to say it. Home is not your house, it's your people, I guess. And it was just beautiful. And then, of course, Poe had to kind of ruin it a little bit.
Yeah, like there's also a moment where like Poe like burps and he's like, "Sorry, I drank too much blue milk earlier."
Right, and it's like, oh, callback.
Before we get to like the epilogue, it cuts back to another like little bit where Alden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover, the younger Orlando, like they're on a different set. It looks like this disco place. They got the disco ball on the ceiling, and then all of a sudden the song from Kinect Star Wars, the Han Solo song starts playing, and they're just dancing along to it.
Right, like I wasn't expecting the sequence to go on for so long, and I thought they were going to save it for the end once it kind of started, because I mean they do two little disco bits there, and the first one's kind of normal, if you want to call it normal for disco, but then the old Star Wars disco theme, I guess if you want to call it, starts playing, and out of nowhere, just like you see Din come out with Grogu, Darth Vader comes out of nowhere, and just like and then they're all just like doing the disco to this start, and I was like, okay, if they're gonna do disco, I can see them doing this, and it was just like one of those like super fourth wall breaks where it's like you've got people from the prequel, from the OT, from the like just like if they could get them, they got them for this one scene.
Yeah, like they even got Natalie Portman rapping, I guess as a callback to her SNL bit from a few years ago. Paul Rudd comes out as himself, like not wearing the costume, and he just like takes out a remote and turns on a TV and plays the Mac and Me clip, but replaces Mac with Grogu instead.
Right, and of course, I mean, during that whole little disco scene with Din and Grogu is sitting there eating blue macaroons, and like it looks like you think he's trying to disco, but he's really force reaching for more blue macaroons.
Yeah, and when he gets the macaroons, finally, he points to the macaroons as like Mac, and then he points to himself as like and me. So
right, and it's like, oh, okay, so I guess this version of Grogu can talk, which I'm not gonna argue it, because in that one scene you really can't tell when this is supposed to take place.
Right, like it feels kind of out of universe, like silliness,
Right. I mean, the whole special's kind of like that. So it was like, okay, like I definitely didn't see it coming though. And I mean, I saw the disco ball, and I was kind of like, are they going to? And then they fake you out, with that first disco song that they do, and it's all kind of normal. And it's like I was kind of sad on that moment. But then, the other song starts up, and I was like, wait a minute, I know this one. When it came to the musical numbers, the disco one was probably my favorite.
Okay, yeah, it's just so catchy, and like it looks like everyone's having fun.
Right, like it's just so silly and fun and just an all-around good time.
Feel like I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, so it cuts back to the story, and the characters, they have the Porg family with them, and they actually go to Kashyyyk to celebrate Life Day with Chewie's family again. One of them is like watching a VR, but thankfully it's not cringy this time. Like on the VR headset is that video game Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge for some reason.
Right, like so it's like how did we come up with this? Like where did he get that?
Yeah, like C-3PO says something like, I still don't get a cent for them using my likeness in that horrid game.
Right, and then of course R2 goes over and plugs himself in and like initiates like a 2-player mode, and 3PO leans over and he's like, don't forget, let the Wookiee win.
A couple of the characters are even playing Dejarik, that Star Wars chessboard thing, and like, it's that same thing, like let the Wookiee win. Like it's very obvious that they're just letting the Wookiees win at all these things.
Right, and I also found it kind of interesting that they didn't really update the set at all. Like I would have assumed that that Chewie's house set from the first holiday special, I just kind of assumed that it was destroyed and burned, and but it was either the same set or they did really good at recreating it.
I mean, I bet George Lucas would have wanted it burned down because of his dislike for that special. But yeah, like it looks very close to it. So it's like I couldn't tell you the difference, other than that the picture quality is kind of different.
Right. It's a little bit better.
We should also mention that, like, throughout this whole special, they throw in some commercials for some of the latest Star Wars toys, like some of the newer ones, like even Boba Fett's starship, and they have to reiterate it still has the same name, but we have to market it by this other name. So,
Right,
like, just don't worry about it. Just like calm down.
right, like they finally threw it in a commercial where they're like, no, it's the same name. Like, so you all can quit complaining on the internet. And it was like, wow, they're just going all out with this ad, like calling people out here. Like, it's still the same ship, but for marketing purposes.
And then they like all get together and like around the fireplace, and they sing Yub Nub as like the closing number, and it's like, oh, I'm getting so nostalgic hearing this. This is so good. And we even like see, like, in the corner, like Seth Green is playing with Star Wars action figures. I guess like as a little Robot Chicken reference. Yeah, I thought that was like a lot of fun, like throwing that in there.
Also found it great, like during that last little moment, you know, because all this stuff is going on, and then it was a wardrobe opens up out of nowhere in the back while they're all just like having their little number with Yub Nub, and out of nowhere Topher Grace just walks out and is like, you guys were supposed to call me. Like,
yeah.
like, what happened to my bit? And George is just like, after the song.
Yeah, and so when the song ends, Topher Grace is like, oh, okay, is it my turn now? Okay, hello everyone, I'm Topher Grace. As you know, I love doing edits of some movies, including Star Wars, and I have my own fan edit of the original holiday special. It is just the animated Boba Fett segment and the toy commercials. That's it. And I thought that was like a really funny joke to like end it on.
Right, which we kind of skipped over it, but the animated special that they threw in for this one, what did you think about that? I mean, because I personally wasn't expecting to see Omega show up at all during this, and so whenever we got the animated special, it was almost like a Bad Batch holiday special.
Like, it was a Bad Batch segment, but it was in the animation style of Star Wars Detours, you know, that weird parody looking cartoon that Seth Green worked on. And it's basically like, you know, in this animated segment, the Bad Batch and Omega are trying to look for something. Do you remember what it was that they were looking for?
If I remember properly, it was that something had broken on the ship. I don't remember what it was for, but they needed a replacement because they were, I'm guessing it was kind of weird out of universe type thing because they're trying to make it back to Camino to celebrate Life Day, but it's like, isn't Camino supposed to be under Empire rule at this point? But they don't even touch on that, you know. There's like, we have to go home to see our brothers, but we can't go until we get this piece.
Like, it doesn't feel like it's within the same continuity as the show, but it, like, this whole sentiment of wanting to celebrate with their brothers, like, it felt very holiday special-y to me, you know.
Right. And then Omega is kind of like asking questions, you know, like, what is Life Day, you know, like in the beginning. And so we get like that little moment between Hunter and Omega, and he's explaining it, and she's like, oh, okay, can we stop here? I want to get you guys something. And they're like, oh.
She ends up getting Mantel mix for Wrecker, and like these other gifts for the rest of them. That's like in these like really neatly wrapped, you know, presents, you know, with like the bow and everything. And what'd you think of like some of these gifts that she gave out?
So the Mantel mix seemed like a very obvious choice for Wrecker, and I mean, just his face lighting up because, for one, you know, he wasn't expecting to get anything. None of them were, and she just kind of surprises them all. So like, he gets the Mantel mix, and it was weird because Crosshair is also with him, and she decides to get him like a new scope for one of his rifles, and Crosshair, being Crosshair, just kind of looks at it and is like, oh, the one I have is better. But then he stops for a moment and sees her face, and he's like, "But thank you. I'll still use this one." It's like, oh, the crosshair feels I didn't know we could get.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like if this was in the continuity of the show, it would be like Omega's like helping him to like hunt them or whatever. But here it's like no, she's just giving him like a gift, you know.
Right. It's almost like an alternate timeline or something. Like I would kind of want to see this continuity go on just to see what would happen.
Yeah. We haven't talked about Tech, Echo, and Hunter's gifts yet, have we?
No.
For Hunter, she like gives him this coupon for Dex's diner, and it was like, oh, that's kind of a weird choice, but okay. And for Tech and Echo, she like she gives Tech some sort of video game console. I'm like super out of the video game world, but like, did this look like any sort of console that we have in our real life? Like, is it supposed to look like something specific?
I mean, it kind of looked like a knockoff Nintendo, but still kind of like crossed with, I don't even know. Like it was just kind of weird. It reminded me, it did have like a Nintendo feel, but there was no symbol on it or anything to hint towards what it was a ripoff of.
Right. Yeah, I guess it does kind of look like the OG Nintendo. Yeah, and the remaining gift for the final clone is jukebox that plays music. So, yeah, I guess like keeping up with the musical theme of this whole thing.
Right. And the first song that plays, it was like, I don't know how she did it, but she was able to also record a song without them knowing. And so, like, the first song that plays through, like, I guess this jukebox device is her singing a Life Day song. I mean,
Yeah.
she wasn't very good at it, but it was the thought that counts.
They were like basically smiling along to it, even though it's like pretty clear that it's intended that like she's not singing it very well, but they all want to like, you know, keep the mood like really good and like just keep everyone's spirits up. So yeah, this is a really heartwarming animated segment.
Yeah, and I mean it was weird. I guess not really weird, but the where they chose to place it, you know, because I feel like the Boba Fett animation was done roughly at the midway point of the first holiday special, and this time they just kind of did it real quick and got it done and out of the way. And I was kind of after watching it, I was like, oh, that would have been so much better towards the end. I feel like.
Some of the placement of some of these segments, it's like I guess you could change the order a bit and it would have worked a bit better. But maybe they kind of wanted it to feel not structured completely the best, like to sort of live up to the holiday special reputation in a way. Like you know, like making it feel kind of like it was cobbled together hastily just as the joke, if that makes sense.
Right. I mean, because the first special, it was kind of just thrown together to keep the essence of, or I guess to keep Star Wars in the people's mind while they were working on Empire. And then it came out, and George is like, oh, what have I done? Like, everyone's going to hate it now. And then, but it was still, I mean, the special itself wasn't a phenomenon, but Star Wars was. And so they were like, you know what? If the first one could do bad and everyone still loves the series, who's to say we can't just make this one out of order?
Yeah, and I mean that's Star Wars in general, right? Like the movies came out of order.
Yeah, that too. I didn't even pick up on that either. It was just like, okay, I guess this is just how we do things here.
Also, during the end credits, they have this nice little in memoriam thing for some of the actors who have passed away, like Carrie Fisher, for example. Like they did a good job of including, you know, this special had a lot of the people who are still alive and have been in Star Wars stuff, but they did a good job acknowledging like some of those who are like no longer with us, which I thought was really nice.
Right. Like, I mean, I was expecting the memorial to Carrie Fisher appear, but For whatever reason, even though it is the holiday special, I still wasn't expecting to see the Tarkin memorial.
Oh yeah.
But because they were,
Yeah,
I mean,
because
they're
Peter.
at like a rebel location basically, and they're like, we're gonna take time now to pay respects and everything, and they do Carrie Fisher's short little montage video, I guess you could call it, and then they do one for Tarkin.
Yeah,
And
Peter Cushing, who
yes, Peter
passed
Cushing.
away in the 90s.
Yeah, and it was like, just the whole thing. It was like I wasn't expecting to tear up during the holiday special.
Yeah,
But
like this was like really long. Like this whole like remember all these people thing is like, yeah, it did get me choked up a bit. Yeah.
Right, and I love how they even included just like a one-off shot of Peter Cushing standing there in his slippers,
Yeah.
like on set, just like a quick little. We're gonna throw that in there. But then they also had like photos of Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher on the Falcon, laughing and having a good time. And they really, I feel like a lot of their budget outside of paying people, I feel like a lot of it went to this memorial piece.
Yeah, they ended it on a really emotional note, which kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to get this emotional at the end, but they nailed it. Yeah, was there anything else about the special you want to bring up before we do final thoughts and score out of 10?
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. I am looking forward to going back and watching this again, though, come a little bit closer, later in December. I plan on watching it again.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's gaining its own following, definitely warmer reception than the first one. So I guess we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10. So what are your final thoughts and score out of 10 and unit of measurement for that score for Star Wars Holiday Special 2?
So for Star Wars Holiday Special 2, I went into it pretty much expecting to see a rehashed version of Holiday Special 1. And so I didn't go into it with the highest of expectations. So I think because of that, it definitely delivered, blew my expectations out of the water. So I'm probably going to give it 9.5 bottles of blue milk.
Yeah, I think I'm actually with you there. Like, the bar was so low, and they even mention it in the special itself. Like, someone's like, the bar is so low for a holiday special. And then Harrison and Dalton look at whoever said, and they're like, what? As if their name was said, like their character's name. They got like pretty much everyone. Like, Adam Driver had a cameo like during like the behind the scenes things are and like at the end when everyone's like celebrating, like he's in the background. And I was also surprised when like toward the end Jackson showed up, the Green Rabbit guy from Star Wars, like the original Marvel comics. And it was like so fun to see him in live action. Like I've been wanting to see him in like some of the Mandalorian or related shows that have to do with the underworld and stuff like that. But I was like really happy to see him here. And then it cuts to John and George, and one of them is like, is this an Easter special? And like they just like shrug and just roll with it.
Yeah, it definitely had me a little confused because I personally didn't know the character, and I was like, oh, so this is just going to be a universal holiday special now, especially whenever they mentioned is this Easter. And then I want to say like someone on set looked over and like, do you not know your own characters, George?
Yeah, I mean, he's from the universe that George created, but I think it was like one of the Marvel writers created Jackson. So, and like, I know George doesn't like read every Star Wars thing. So I'd be curious to like know if this was his first time hearing about Jackson or if he maybe forgot in the old days. So like, I don't know, but it was like a lot of fun just having this Easter egg, so to speak.
Yeah, it was interesting to say. I mean, a green rabbit showing up on set. I mean, is going to be interesting, especially for those that don't know the character.
Yeah. Yeah, and he basically kind of sounds like Bugs Bunny, which makes sense. I looked at the credits. Apparently, he's voiced by Billy West here, who I think voiced Bugs Bunny in Space Jam. So, yeah, I was like really digging this. Like they did a lot with this special that I wasn't really expecting. Like they went above and beyond, and this is definitely a classic. It's a huge improvement over the first one. Like it's like it's such a probably the biggest leap from one thing to its successor that I've ever seen. So yeah, I would give this one 9.5 out of 10 Sarlaccs.
Ooh.
So yeah, like that's Star Wars Holiday Special 2. Yeah, thanks for joining me on this episode, Jesse. Where can people find all your stuff?
So you can find us over at anchor.fm/question-possible-answer. From there, you can follow the links to your preferred listening service, or you can listen right there on the website. Over there, we discuss, what if scenarios, I guess, for movies, and we discuss, fun theories. You can also find our pages on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Question Possible Answer. You can find our release schedules there. By the time this episode comes out, our episode that will be out will be a discussion of the movie Solo, which kind of ties in nicely with this one. I had a good friend on, Mr. Ben Hart, to discuss that one.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
So, check us out.
Yeah, and as always, I'll link those in the show notes for this episode so people can look at the episode notes and click on the link. So yeah, check out Question Possible Answer. And as for me, people can follow me at Steven Schinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. Go to stevenschinder.com for info on my novel Lemons Look Like Rain. And like I keep saying, I'm still making progress on the next one. So keep an eye out for that and news about it, I guess. Me and my dad do a podcast called Yes Shift, which you can find at anchor.fm/Yes Shift. We talk about the progressive rock band Yes, my favorite band, so it's a lot of fun. And you can email Delayed Replay at delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what your favorite holiday movies are, I guess. Like my favorite is probably Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like my favorite Halloween and Christmas movie. Curious to hear what people's favorites are. But yeah, I guess that'll do it. Thanks again for joining me, Jesse.
As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And the next episode will be on Pixar's Newt. And without further delay, have a good day, because this is the way.